It's fantastic that you brought that up because Jen and I had put out a post the other day because, as you know, the corporate media cannot stop fluffing the pillow of our current president. And you had one person, obviously, as you know, at the New York Times. I think Nicholas Kristof is the guy who wrote the article saying that FDR Biden's been like FDR, and we come out, we make a post basically saying, okay, here is exactly why he has not been like FDR, and he's not going to be. And then you have all of these neoliberals, a lot of them live in Manhattan, who jumped on the thing talking about, well, FDR wasn't that good a person. He had this, that, and the other thing. And I wanted to point out to them, you do understand that even though he had these super majorities in Congress, the Democratic Party had a supermajority because of the segregated South. They were all part of the party from Virginia all the way through Louisiana, East Texas, down through Florida. And they want to pretend like this is not, they have revisionist history. They don't actually want to talk about it. I actually just finished reading the book by Doris Kearns Goodwin, Leadership in Turbulent Times. And she really talks about, what it took for LBJ to get Kennedy's legislation passed in 64 and 65, and recognizing how these factions all over the country play different roles. It's very difficult to try to break through that force field and really engaging people so that they understand what their history is all about. My question to you is, how come the powers that be have been so successful at keeping a lid on the Tulsa massacre? The fact that it's just, it's one of the most, like I said, darkest moments in our country's history. And yet for some reason, it really doesn't seem like a lot of people actually know about it. Well,
how to keep a lid on it? I think it's part of a larger issue of American exceptionalism. So there's outright lying. You destroy the newspapers that printed the story. You make an excuse and say, we've got to use textbooks from Texas. And, well, we know what that amounts to. Yep. But there's also this desire, even by liberals. Obama used to say it all the time. It annoyed the hell out of me. He'd always talk about America is exceptional. America is indispensable. Meaning the rest of the world was dispensable. But when you have this idea that your country is the greatest, is the best, love it or leave it, that you can't question anything, then that means you have to hide a lot. You have to hide a lot of ugly history. You can't talk about the Pilgrims at Thanksgiving. You can, but you can't. Talk about them putting the Indian leader known as King Philip putting his head on a pike. You can't talk about that. The genocides of the original inhabitants, the way that enslavement actually worked, the segregation, all of it. When you mention FDR, the internment of Japanese Americans. I think we always have to point out that when presidents do the right thing, it's because of pressure from the people. And so, yes, you can give LBJ credit for getting this legislation through, like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, but it's because of popular demand that forced
it. Wasn't out of the kindness of his heart, is what you're saying. It wasn't just that he just thought, God, it's just really a time for people to all be treated justly.
Seriously. I had a good question. I had a hard time reading that section because Doris actually worked for LBJ in 1967. And so it's one of those things where you're not gonna nail him the way that you really need to. And I think he is one of the worst presidents we've ever had. So.
All right. We're not getting off on a tangent.
No, we're not. But we do have a
request.
We have an awesome supporter of the show, Roger Meadows, and he wants you to tell us about Wilmington, North Carolina.
I'm assuming you know what he's talking about.
Yes, I do. Okay. 1898. I'm sorry. Reconstruction did not end. We were taught that the stolen election in 1876 ended Reconstruction. That's not
made it
quite
10 times
true.
Worse.
It lived on for some time. And in Wilmington, North Carolina, it lasted almost to the end of the 1800s. There was an interracial government there. There were Republicans, of course, in Wilmington. But a mob rose up and did the same thing as in Tulsa. People were killed. They destroyed a newspaper. They chased people out of town. And a segregationist government took over. I believe it was McKinley was president at the time, and it's always presidents are asked to help, they never do anything. So it was quite horrible. It was just the same thing. I mean the end result was the same, but there was violence used to destroy those Reconstruction governments, and those few that lasted that long were often destroyed in the same way.
Oh, great.
It's obviously not a subject that we would necessarily want to dive too deep into, but obviously, the mayoral election is in a few weeks. And I'm curious as to, obviously we know what's happened, unfortunately, with Diane's campaign. Is there anybody who is running right now? We did put out a post the other day. Obviously, we do have our disagreements, obviously, with Andrew Yang, but the fact that he did endorse the New York Health Act, I think was great. He's the one person who has. Do you have a thought as to who would be, if at all, somewhat of a transformational mayor should they win?
No, I don't think
That's pretty simple.
This crop will be. Well, a couple of strange things have happened. Dianne Morales' campaign is imploding. Scott Stringer was a favorite of many progressives. Then there were allegations of sexual harassment. And that's something it's very difficult to recover from. There were some people who endorsed him, who unendorsed him. We also have the complication of ranked choice voting being used in the primary in a few weeks. Nobody knows what that will mean. So voters can rank up to 5 people should they choose. So nobody knows what that is going to do. So I don't know about who would be most transformational. I'm not seeing anybody in that way. It's now New York is a tough town. It's most people have a liberal sensibility, but rich people run politics in New York, especially the real estate industry. And they always have a say. They make sure they have a seat at the table. So it's difficult to have the progressive legislation that most New Yorkers want. I mean, we do get it. We already have a $15 minimum wage in New York City as an example. We got rid of there were some crooked Democrats who were always voting with Republicans in Albany. We got rid of them. They're Democratic majority in both.
How do we do that here? How do we get rid of our crooked Democrats that vote with Republicans? How do we do that?
I think you got a much better shot in New York.
I'm just asking.
Well, I think there was a concerted effort to do it. And of course, we have Cuomo as governor. So, there's only, but he also can, he's not stupid, whatever else he is. So they strengthened rent regulations that had been decimated when Pataki was governor and took so many apartments out of the reach of working people. So there are good things that have happened in this state. And that's one of the reasons that people like AOC were elected, because of this progressive momentum. So who's most possibility of being transformational? I don't know. It's and as for Biden being transformational, I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like, I mean, FDR did. I mean, we still have a Social Security Act, for example.
Right.
Because of that New Deal legislation. We have Medicare and Medicaid. That's transformational. But someone who says, I asked the parliamentarian about the minimum wage and they said no. And
I just wanted to have been in on that meeting, and who actually thought, people will buy this. Yeah, they'll buy it.
He didn't want to do it, so they had to find a way out. I've never heard of a president asking a parliamentarian about anything. They push through what they want to push through, so he doesn't want to do it.
Clearly,
how can we get out? I know. We'll ask the parliamentarian. So someone says, "We can't do this, right?" And the parliamentarian says, "No, you can't do that." Or the student loan debt, and it really made me angry that he lied about it and said, "Well, people shouldn't pay to send somebody to the University of Pennsylvania, which costs $70,000. That's not it at all, and he knows it is, but he doesn't want to do it."
No.
The public option. What else did he go back on? I don't know. There's so many things.
$15 minimum wage.
Look, the first thing he went back on was the $2,000 check that he then turned into $1,400 check.
And then there were there was only like 20 million people who didn't actually get it because of the means testing nonsense.
Well, and then he sent this. Everybody made fun of Trump because he sent this letter with his stimulus check, and so did Biden.
Yeah,
this really is $2,000 because it's it's 2,000 minus 600, so it really is 2,000. And who first came up with the number $2,000? Trump.
I totally came up with the number. I totally came up with it. They believe me. They believe.
Oh,
they
no,
totally.
Don't start him.
You don't want me to do it?
I don't know. Oh God, here it goes.
I came up with the number. I totally came up with it, and they wanted to take all the credit away from me. It's totally they're terrible people, Margaret, terrible people. And I'm going to run for president again. Believe me, I'm totally getting out of that Southern District of New York nonsense. I'm gonna make a deal with them.
I think you're going to be wearing an orange jumpsuit.
It's the art of the deal.
Your orange jumpsuit will match your face.
I'll make a deal with them, or I'll bribe them, whatever it takes. Believe me when I tell you, we'll get it done. And I'm totally going to be the next president again. Look at Joe. Joe doesn't know what he's doing. He's totally lost his mind.
That is true. I will give you that.
I'm totally ready to do this again. Are you ready to support me? Are you ready to support? I'm totally ready for this. I'm going to be much better this time. Believe me when I tell you.
Viewership is dropping by the load.
Yeah, sure. That's exactly.
Okay. Well, and who accepted 600? Nancy Pelosi. Oh, I think this is significant, she said. But at any rate, So that's what we, and there these things are helping people. The additional unemployment is very helpful to people, but it's all temporary.
Yeah.
So so far there's been nothing transformational. He's proposed this huge budget. He's proposed this infrastructure. It's not clear how much of it he will actually get, because we have the only people who stand up and put their foot down and say, I'm not going to vote for this, are people on the right. And people on the left, they can't be bothered to get together a relative handful of people and say, this is what we need to see in this bill.
And I do think that a lot of people, like you said, are starting to get hip to the game. They're starting to see that the Democrats really do have control.
It's just theater. It's controlled opposition.
And the idea that they can't get Manchin and Sinema in line, it's like, give me a break.
If the president wanted something done,
he would get it done. And especially, and don't tell me, if this president currently has a plus 60% approval rating, do not tell me that if he used the bully pulpit that he wouldn't get what he wanted. It's nonsense.
Of course
people are starting to learn on that.
Well,
but what I do think...
He said nothing will fundamentally change.
He kept
and he has kept his word.
Remember, it's okay when Biden lies, not when Trump lies.
But Joe Manchin, I feel like Joe Manchin, takes one for the team, and he says, okay, I'll be the bad guy.
Exactly.
You can all pretend that the rest of you are nice. It's just me. Yeah. And he's not the only Democrat who doesn't want to increase the minimum wage. Of course he's not.
Oh no, ours doesn't. Look, they're doing it now. They're doing the forced controlled opposition theater show regarding what they just did with the January 6th. To have a commission or an investigation into that. Or now they're going to just use that to campaign on all during the season. They're going to be like, look, we wanted to investigate that.
And I do have an issue though with the idea of a commission anyway. I feel like it would be a lot of theater where the Democrats would sit around and say, we're not the ones who invaded the Capitol. Look how bad the Republicans are. And it would be a way to keep us from asking them any hard questions. So I want them to help people the way we need to be helped. I want them to do what they said they were going to do, to help working people. There's so many people who are struggling, and these Republican governors who say we're going to make people go back to work by not accepting the additional unemployment. And what does Biden say? Well, there's nothing much I can do. And I said to myself, give it to them directly. I mean, cut out the middleman, send people a check. I mean, but this is another indication of people who just are not serious.
And of course, if DeSantis somehow does become our next president, it'll be like, hey, I told you so. You kind of just let it happen. And there are so many things. They have opened the door for him to not only win re-election as governor, but to basically take over the Republican Party. And I'm seeing it way in advance, and people are pretending like this ain't going to happen. I'm like, unless something significant does happen, I actually do think DeSantis is our next president, which is unfortunate, but that is where we're heading right now. But on a better note,
we're warning you people.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.